Hello learners and welcome to your Natural Sciences lesson. So today we're going to be doing application questions and practice questions that are based on the chemical reactions. So let's start with the practice questions. The first question that is given to us is, we need to write each of the descriptions as a word equation. Now the description is, oxygen reacts with hydrogen to form water. So we need to take that description and formulate a word equation from that. So we know that this substance oxygen, it is reacting with this substance hydrogen to form water. So that means oxygen and hydrogen, those are your reactants, and what is formed is your product being the water. We also know that when we have more than one reactant, in this case we have two, those reactants are going to be separated by a plus sign. Now to separate the reactants and the product, we're going to use an arrow pointing away from the reactants and pointing towards the products. So we have oxygen. So we have oxygen plus hydrogen reacting to form water. So the two substances being oxygen and hydrogen are written on the left-hand side of the arrow, and the product, because it is water in this case, it's going to be written on the right-hand side of the arrow. So all the products are always written on the right-hand side, and all the reactants are always written on the left-hand side of the arrow. Now next description says, we get magnesium oxide when magnesium reacts with oxygen. So magnesium oxide is what we are going to get when magnesium reacts with oxygen. So the magnesium must react with oxygen to produce the magnesium oxide, which then means magnesium plus oxygen are your reactants, and they are written on the left-hand side of the arrow, and the magnesium oxide, it is your product that is going to be written on the right-hand side of the arrow. So this is what we have as our word equation, that magnesium plus oxygen, they are going to react together to form the product being magnesium oxide. So this is what we have. Magnesium plus oxygen are reacting together to form magnesium oxide as our product. Remember, reactants on the left-hand side and products are written on the right-hand side. So next question is, this reaction turns a clear liquid milky. And then we are told that there are two products. Remember, products are written on the right-hand side of the arrow. Locate the arrow first. Here's our arrow. This is our right-hand side. That's our left-hand side. So now, right-hand side, products, left-hand side, reactants. So question is, give the chemical formula of the two reactants. So what are the two reactants that we can see there? Remember, they are written on the left-hand side. Their chemical formulas are, what is written on the left-hand side? There's two of them because they are separated by a plus. The first one, it is going to be Ca bracket OH2, our calcium hydroxide. Then our next one is CO2. So those are our two reactants. So CO2 is your carbon dioxide. Then question B says, give the chemical formula of the two products. Remember, products are written on the right-hand side of the arrow, and there's two of them in this particular case, because even the statement tells us that there are two products. So now, what are their chemical formulas? We have the first one, which is going to be CaCO3, which is our calcium carbonate. And then our next one is H2O, which is water, so it's H2O. Calcium carbonate, our metal carbonate, and then our water, our H2O. Right, moving on to our next question. We are given this chemical equation below, the same one, and then we need to answer the questions that are following after that. We need to complete the table by counting the number of atoms of each element on both sides. So we need to know how many Cas we have, which is calcium, how many calciums we have on the left-hand side and also on the right-hand side. Same thing applies with the O, the oxygen, how many we have on the left-hand side and the right-hand side. Hydrogen, how many we have on the left and the right. Carbon, how many we have on the left and also on the right. So to start, how many now how many atoms of calcium do we have on the left-hand side? This is our arrow, left-hand side and the right-hand side. Left-hand side denotes the reactants, right-hand side denotes the products. So therefore, how many calciums we have on the left-hand side? There's just the one calcium atom on the left-hand side, so there's one. Then on the right-hand side we have there's also just the one, so we have one. Then now, what about the oxygen atoms that we have on the left-hand side? So we're seeing that the oxygen is inside the bracket. Now that bracket has that number there, which is known as a subscript. Now the subscript tells us how many atoms we have in that particular compound. So now this bracket tells us that we need to only focus on the OH, which means we have 2 oxygen atoms and 2 hydrogen atoms here on this bracket here, including the 2. So, and then now, not only just the 2, we also have another 2 oxygen atoms still on the left-hand side. So we have 2 plus 2 oxygen atoms. So together we have 4 oxygen atoms on the left-hand side. So we have 4 oxygen on the left. And then on the right-hand side, how many do we have? Now the subscript 3 tells us that we only have 3 oxygen atoms in this particular compound, being the calcium carbonate. So we have 3. Then we also have another oxygen atom there. Because there's no subscript, we know that it means there's 1. So that means this is 1 oxygen atom plus the 3 oxygen atoms there. So we have 4 oxygen atoms on the right-hand side as well. So we have 4. Now going to the hydrogen, we said because of that 2, we have 2 oxygen atoms and 2 hydrogen atoms on the left-hand side. We don't have any other hydrogen atoms on the left-hand side, so there's just the 2. Now, what about the right-hand side? So on this compound, we don't have hydrogen. We only find hydrogen on this compound. And then that 2, that subscript 2 there, tells us that we have 2 hydrogen atoms only in that chemical compound of water and the 1 oxygen atom in that chemical compound. So we only have just the 2 and nothing else on the right-hand side. So we still have the 2 hydrogen atoms. Then carbon. So the only one remaining here, we don't have carbon on this compound. We only find carbon on this compound. And in this compound, we have 1 carbon atom and 2 oxygen atoms. So we only have 1 carbon atom on the left-hand side. Then what about now the right-hand side? We don't find carbon on this H2O. We only find carbon on the calcium carbonate there. Then now, how many carbon atoms do we find in that particular compound? We have 1 calcium, we have 1 carbon, but we have 3 oxygen atoms. So therefore, the carbon atoms on the right-hand side, it is just the 1. Now, as you can see from the counting of these atoms on the left-hand side and the right-hand side, that the numbers of the atoms on the left are equal to the number of atoms on the right-hand side. So now, before we go to the next part of our questions, which are the application questions, we are just going to quickly go for an ad break, and I will see you just after this.